Well, hello and welcome into another edition of the Great Eight Rankings. Week 11 of the season is already here. That, of course, means it's the final week of the regular season for our VHSL teams, for our VISAA teams. Their playoffs start this Saturday. So this is our last rankings before the playoffs begin.
Oh, so sad. I feel
It's
like we've gotten so spoiled with like such great teams and just great football these past 10 weeks. I mean, there's so much talent in this area. I've just been blown away with my first season.
Yeah, it's been fun to track it this way. Last year we didn't do a rankings because, it was just me in the sports department. So it's like, how does just you come up with the rankings just with one person? And it's been fun, giving out these rankings. Obviously, they mean nothing, but hopefully, for our viewers out there, it gave you a better idea of, who was winning games, who was impressing, not just us, but, everybody in the region, the fans of high school football in our region. And we've gotten such great response from it. So thanks so much for everyone that's tuned into the show this week. In a little housekeeping for us, we'll do rankings this week. We'll do the playoff rankings. And then once we get into the playoffs, it's kind of pointless to rank teams as they're going through playoffs. And then we'll do an end of the year rankings to kind of recap what will hopefully be a really exciting playoff run for a lot of our area teams. So one more regular show, then we're going to be gone for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back for a final ranking show. But let's go ahead and jump right in to the Week 11 rankings, entering the final week of the regular season. Madeline, can you take us through it?
Yeah, so at number 1, we have the Dinwiddie Generals. They are at 10-0. Double digits now of wins.
Yeah.
They have stayed at number 1 because they're the best team.
Yeah, when we started this whole thing, I think they started the year in our rankings at 4 or 5. They kept winning games. They looked like the most dominant team in the region, and I think they are, especially with the amount of talent they have on the roster. They finished off their perfect season, one of our few teams that are done for the year, as their bye week will take place this week, obviously. But a 19-0 win over Prince George to finish their regular season 10-0.
Yeah, and I think that bye week probably comes at a perfect time. That team has been plowing over teams, for 10 weeks now, and I think it's good that they'll get a little bit of rest before the playoffs because they've got a long journey ahead. But that brings us to number 2, which is the Manchester Lancers, who are also undefeated at 9-0. They have a big game coming up this week.
Yeah, they really do. They'll take on the 6th-ranked Huguenot Falcons in our this week's Grade 8 rankings. 9-0, they have just blown through their entire schedule this season. They've just been absolutely incredible, starting the season strong. That Dominion District's lacking a little bit of depth, I think. Like last week, they got a 61-0 win over Richmond High School for the Arts. But they get a real test this upcoming week against Huguenot. So we'll see if they can continue their dominance. And if they do, who's saying that they can't be number 1 in our final rankings?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably their biggest test yet, I would say. I mean, they played Glen Allen, I think, in week 3, and I think that was their closest game. I believe it was the final score was like 28-25, something like that. It was a field goal game that I was at for game of the week, and ever since then, I mean, there hasn't been one that's even been close.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
But that brings us to number 3, which is the Verina Blue Devils at 7-2. Last week they were at number 4, but they have moved up a spot to number 3 because they beat Highland Springs in last week's game of the week.
Yeah, last week's game of the week was an incredible atmosphere. It was a Thursday night showdown, and let's actually go through and talk about that game a little bit. It was a matchup that I think the entire region was looking forward to.
Yeah.
It was a Thursday night game. The game was moved to Thursday with Halloween being on Friday. A lot of our games actually took place on Thursday. We'll go over some of that in a little bit. But it was the Caleb Weiss show. He threw a touchdown there to get him on the board, and the Verina defense played lights out in this game. So did Highland Springs. I mean, they got a couple of big chunk plays like this one, another Caleb Weiss run for a score, which, that made it 14-0 at the time. Highland Springs made it a field goal in the 4th quarter, that to make it 14-3. But they could never get their offense going. It was the first time in like over a decade plus. I think 2012 maybe the last time Highland Springs hadn't scored a touchdown in a game. But it was Verina that really showed out and impressed, not just us here on the Blitz, but the entire region of not only do they have one of the best offenses, they have one of the best defenses, and not a lot of people have talked about that, and that's what head coach Marcus Lewis had to say after the game about their big win over Lauren Johnson and the Highland Springs Springers.
I mean, it's always good with a W, but especially when you're playing against, the school right down the street, and all these guys that play together. I got a couple of cousins on the team as well, so it's always good to come up with a W. I mean, to come off a win like this is always good. It's a playoff atmosphere. It's going to always be, a tough battle, physical battle. So now we got Patrick Henry, but now we're looking towards the playoff as well. So it's good to have a game like this at the end of the year before playoffs.
You spent a lot of time talking with the Varina this year as well as Highland Springs. What was your impressions going into that game, and what do you learn now with a 21-3 win for the Blue Devils?
Well, I didn't think anybody thought it was going to be as, it wasn't close. It wasn't close. Game. I thought, I think everybody thought that this was going to be maybe a field goal type of, or, maybe a one touchdown type of game. And obviously wasn't. I talked to both coaches last week before the game. And one of the main things that Coach Lewis over at Varina was telling me was we have got to contain Antoine Richardson. He is a huge threat over there for Highland Springs. Yep. He's a quarterback that, is kind of a dual threat guy. He can pass, he can run, and he's just kind of shifty, like he can get by guys.
Yeah, and he's one of the best safeties in the region as
well.
That
probably helps him out a ton. And so that was one of the main things that the Blue Devils were working on in practice last week was, we have got to contain the quarterback. And that was one of their goals, and they accomplished that goal clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a huge win. Last year they had all those expectations entering this season after they made it to the state championship game. They suffered a couple of tough losses to some really good opponents. This was by far their biggest, region matchup that people were looking forward to season. What's interesting and exciting about what's upcoming is they're going to have to play Dinwiddie at some point. And when we see those teams face off, I think the winner of that one could easily be our state champion in the Class 4 region. But big win for Varina, going on the road, by the way, to Highland Springs, getting the win 21-3. And let's actually go through some of the other games from this past week that took place around the region. Hermitage got a big win over Freeman, 48-24. Armstrong, they took care of business against Hanover. I thought this was going to be a really close game. Hanover entered the matchup with just one loss, and Armstrong went up 21-0 in a blink of an eye and would go on to hold on to win that matchup 47-16. Lunenburg Central with a big win over Nottoway to remain undefeated. Hopewell got a big win over Matoaca, 26-20. Caroline avenged their one loss of the year with the win, 54-14. Thomas Jefferson with a big win over Godwin as they kind of look towards those Class 2 playoffs. And then Meadowbrook with a big win over Colonial Heights to set them up with, I think they are set up to make the playoffs at 6-3 if they can win this Friday, but I'm not exactly sure. The playoffs are kind of hard to figure out.
Playoffs are kind of weird. I feel like you never really know until the very end.
The night after all the scores are in, and then it's still a couple hours before the VHSL kind of gives us an idea of who gets in. But what a season regardless for Meadowbrook. But, getting back to our rankings here, you mentioned the fact that Varina moved up a spot. That's because our number 3 team from last week lost to the Trinity Titans.
Yep. So that brings us to our number 4, which is the Trinity Titans. They jumped back into the rankings. Last week they were an honorable mention. They did get a huge win over Benedictine, who has been in our rankings, I'm pretty sure, for every week now.
Absolutely.
So, and that was a huge
They
win
were number
for
one
them.
for a lot of our season as well. They had some injuries. Their running back Dolan went down, and they missed a game against Woodbury Forest. In that matchup against Woodbury Forest, they only won 7-0. That's why they kind of fell in our rankings. Had him back for that matchup against Trinity. I don't know if he was at 100%, and that could be the difference because he's been incredible this season for the Cadets. But Trinity gets a huge win at home. Not only did that win put them at number 4 in our rankings, but it also gave them the number 1 seed in the VISAA playoffs. So now they'll be taking on Norfolk Academy Saturday at 1 o'clock with a spot in the state championship game on the line.
Yeah, very good game for them to win over the Benedictine Cadets. And that brings us to number 5, which is Benedictine. They were at number 3 last week, and they dropped down to number 5 because of that loss.
Yeah, the only thing we didn't really mention about the game, it was a 26-21 win for Trinity that came down to the last play of the game. Benedictine had the ball, I think, on the 6-yard line with a chance to win it. Trinity got the stand. I mean, it was really a coin flip of a game, and it set Trinity up to get the 1 seed. And with the loss, it gave Benedictine the 2 seed, and they will now be hosting St. Christopher's on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And what should be a great game, St. Chris, as you see down in our honorable mentions. They are the only team this year that was able to beat Trinity. Trinity's only got 1 loss this season. It was that St. Chris team at home a few weeks back.
Yeah, St. Chris is just, and they got, I know this is the public schools now, but they got that win over Huguenot in week 1. So they've been in and out of the rankings all year, and they're just a super scrappy team. Their defense has been really incredible this whole season.
Yep, and a spot in the state championship on the line this Saturday. On the road for St. Chris, Benedictine will be hosting them in the 2 seed versus 3 seed game.
Yeah, that'll be a huge one. That brings us to number 6, which is the Huguenot Falcons at 8-1. Like we said, that 1 loss to St. Chris. Last week they were at number 7. They jump a spot to number 6 this week.
Yeah, Huguenot's incredible. Haven't really seen them be tested all that much. Since that first game of the year against St. Chris. They had a big matchup. I think it was game of the week matchup against Midlothian that they kind of ran away. I'm not sure if that's what it was, but they took down Midlothian.
Huguenot at Midlow was one of our game of the weeks as well.
They took care of business in that game.
Yeah, absolutely plowed over Midlothian.
We're going to learn a lot about both Manchester and Huguenot. I think everyone's expecting this big high-scoring affair, but but both of those teams' defenses are incredible as well.
Exactly.
So it's like it would be hilarious if it turns into this like slugfest 7-0 game when everyone's expecting it to be like 70-60.
I think you're right. I think if I was a betting gal, I think I would bet on it to be a bit more lower scoring.
Yeah.
I was just looking at, because it's our game of the week and I'm preparing to kind of make my preview for it. I was looking at both of their schedules throughout the year, and I think Huguenot has probably been tested a little bit less, especially since that week 1 loss. But they've shut out 5 teams. They've had 5 shutout wins this year. And, on the other side of that, they scored like 50 points. They've averaged 50-something points. They've had multiple 70-point games.
Yeah.
So both of these teams, it's like they're very, very similar. They both have these super high-powered offenses. Their quarterbacks are great in the air. Charles Scott at Huguenot and Landon Abernathy at Manchester. Both of those quarterbacks have just been essential to them. And their defenses have been pretty much just as good. Holding, I think Manchester, I looked at it, and they've only averaged giving up 8 points a game, which is only, 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
And then I think Huguenot, even less than that, since that week 1 loss where they gave up 21 to St. Chris. So this is going to be, this is going to be a good one.
We're all looking forward to it. Be sure to tune in the Blitz for Jamal's full preview. He'll be at the game and on the sidelines this week, but we're looking forward to seeing who can come away with that win for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that brings us to number 7, which is Highland Springs. Obviously, they took that loss last week to Verina. They couldn't get on. They got on the board with a field goal, but they could not get in the end zone.
Yeah, couldn't quite pull them out of our rankings. Highland Springs is an incredible team. They have 3 losses, and that might make you scratch your head, especially when we look at some of the teams we have in our honorable mentions. But I'm taking Highland Springs head-to-head, I think, over all the teams we have below them. They're so talented from top to bottom. The problem is they've just ran into some buzzsaws. Verina's team that played in the state championship last year. And
they probably had one of, if not the toughest schedule out of any of our teams.
In the state, for sure. So they don't fall out of our rankings. They stay at number 5. This week they go on the road to last week they were 5.
Last week they were number 5.
7 this week. They go on the road to Hanover this Friday, which should be a good get ready for. Hanover is going to make the playoffs this year. They only had 1 loss entering their game against Armstrong this past week. That's a team that's going to be playing in the postseason. It'll be a nice, I don't want to say warm up for Highland Springs, but I expect them to be able to handle Hanover, and that'll get them, 7-3, get a little more confidence as they enter the playoffs. Luckily for them, they don't have to deal with Dinwiddie or Verina or Manchester or Huguenot for that matter on their way to the playoffs. Manchester, of course, is Class 6, and then Dinwiddie, Verina, and Huguenot are all Class 4. So despite the fact that they'll have 3 losses, all these teams that are really good in this region, they're all Class 4 teams. So they kind of have a nice little path to make a run in the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see them going far. I mean, Lauren Johnson's a great coach. Like you said, that's a great team that I think has just had a really tough path so far. But that brings us to number 8, which is our Armstrong Wildcats. Big win this past week over Hanover. We thought it was going to be a little bit of a closer game, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, if Verina and Highland Springs weren't playing, it would have been Armstrong Hanover. It was going to be a 7-1 or a 7-1 team versus an 8-0 team. I think Armstrong's actually 9-0, so there is one little mistake on. I was bragging before the show to Madeline, not going to have any typos this time. But no, Armstrong's actually 9-0, not 8-0. And so we were expecting that to be a really good game, but they jumped all over them. They got 2 quick turnovers out of the jump. It was 21-0 with 8 minutes to go in the first quarter. And I was like, well, that's good for me. I got my 3 highlights going to my next game. And they would go on to win the game 47-16. And then they're on the road at Mechanicsville this Thursday before what I'm pretty sure they'll be the 1 seed in the Class 2 playoffs. They're a team that has state championship aspirations, and I think that they could do it, especially since they moved down last year. They were Class 3. They're absolutely good enough to beat a Hanover team who's in Class 4. So it will be interesting to see if they can make that deep run.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that brings us to our honorable mentions. We have a newcomer in the honorable mentions. We have Essex.
Yeah, had to give the Trojans some love. They are one of the best programs in our region that we don't get to feature all that often just because of the distance, from our station to their school. So it's kind of can't really get out there and get back in time to make show. But they're 9-0 to start the year. And an incredible team. Last year they went wire to wire. Their one loss was to Rappahannock, who only had one loss. They made that deep playoff run. So big ups to Essex. Congratulations on making it to our honorable mention spot. Undefeated on the year, hoping to move to 10-0 this week with a game.
Big shout out. Then we have Hermitage, the Panthers. They got to still be in there.
Yeah, 7-2 on the year. Their 2 losses are to 2 really good teams, Highland Springs and Verina. Another team in that Class 5 region that's hoping to make a little bit of noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they absolutely can. We also have Louisa County, that they are still undefeated. They haven't been tested as much.
They haven't had the schedule, I think, to put them in the rankings. Obviously, last week they were in the rankings, but with the loss to with Trinity's win over Benedictine, somebody had to come in and somebody had to come out. Just look at the workload that Huguenot has had. It wasn't as impressive as Highland Springs. And so with that, they kind of fall out. No disrespect to Savion Hyder and Dysere Carter. They're incredible wideout. Really good team they have over there. Excited to see them get tested in the playoffs. I'm expecting them to win this upcoming week and move to 10-0. So big, don't hate us, Louisa County fans. We know you're really good, but somebody had to come out.
Yeah, and then that brings us to St. Chris. We said it already. They're a scrappy team. They've been in and out of the rankings all year. Just so many good teams that you can't put them all in.
Yeah, lost a surprising into Woodbury Forest 2 weeks ago to move them. They finished their year 7-3, or with 3 losses, I should say. And now they can prove that, they can win a state championship. They're facing off against Benedictine, who lost to Trinity, who's a team they beat. So I'm sure they're feeling confident going into the year. They lost to Benedictine earlier this season. It should be a great matchup in the Class 1 state semifinals this upcoming Saturday.
And then our final honorable mention is going to be Thomas Dale. They are another team that they have a great defense, and they've also been kind of in and out of the rankings as well. But just another team that's been a really strong kind of contender that just, has a couple of losses that are, 2 good teams. Or is it just one loss?
One loss to Dinwiddie.
One loss to Dinwiddie. And
our
they're number one
team, 24-14 4 weeks ago. A great team. They struggled against a couple of teams that we think they probably should have beat by more. Meadowbrook 16-8. I got it pulled up right here. Matoaka 14-6. Kind of struggled early against Glen Allen, who's got 4 or 5 losses this year, 14-8. So they've managed to get wins, and that's what matters. Our rankings don't matter. Getting the wins is what really matters. And Thomas Dale, definitely a team to look out for in the playoffs this season. They are definitely going Dancing, and they got one last matchup this Friday against Hopewell. A couple of other teams I wanted to kind of give a shout out to. We didn't have room in our rankings. Caroline, 8-1, having one of their best seasons in school history. They made our honorable mention list a couple of weeks ago before they lost that one matchup to, I think it was Cortland. And then Lunenburg Central is 9-0 to start the season in Class 1 as well. Looking forward to seeing that matchup against Essex at some point in the postseason as well. But a lot to look forward to this upcoming Friday in terms of, games that are taking place. We'll go through the schedule real quick before we end things with top lights. Couple of games on Thursday in our region. Armstrong taking on Mechanicsville. Middlesex is at Matthews, and then Meadowbrook is at Matoaka. But the big night's Friday, and obviously our biggest matchup, our game of the week, Huguenot hosting Manchester, and what we are expecting to be an awesome game. Richmond City High School for the Arch is taking on Clover Hill in a battle of two 0-9 teams. Somebody's getting a win. So I'm excited for that one. We're going to be on the sidelines of that game to make sure that we get the first win of the year for either the Cavaliers or the Bulldogs. This Freeman Glen Allen game has some playoff implications. Both teams 5-4, hoping to push their way into the postseason with the win. Exis, who we just mentioned, hosting Lancaster on Friday night. Tune-up game for the playoffs for Verina, taking on Patrick Henry. Elsie Bird and James Rivers. Another one of those games for playoff seeding is on the lines. I think Elsie Bird's kind of locked into the Class 5 playoffs, but a win helps them get a seed higher. And so a lot of these games, kind of playoff seedings on the line, but for the most part, the playoffs are pretty much set, and it's just seeding or whether or not teams are going to be a 3 seed or a 4 seed. Yeah. There's not too much dramatics in terms of this team gets in, this team gets out.
Yeah, we kind of know who's in and who's out.
That one matchup between James River and Elsie Bird, something to keep an eye out for and show is that Freeman Glen Allen game. But we're most excited about the matchup. Manchester and Huguenot, our viewers are too. They voted that our game of the week. We'll be on the sidelines for that one. We'll have full highlights, game recap on Friday night, and then our show 11:15. So excited for the final week of the regular season, and then it's time for the playoffs. We've got a couple of shows left in the year, and we're so looking forward to it. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of our Great 8 rankings. We'll end things the same way we always do with the Week 10 top lights. Good night, everybody. See you next week.
Night.